Ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. It's day 46 of this war that began on the 7th of October. And as the Israeli Defense Forces now blow up Hamas hideouts in Gaza, they're determined to prove that Hamas has been using hospitals in Gaza as human shields to avoid a counterstrike by Israel. They've also been building military infrastructure within the premises of various hospitals in Gaza. The hospital in particular is the Al-Shifa hospital, the largest in Gaza. Israel's military has now released a security camera footage which showed hostages being brought into the Al-Shifa hospital after being kidnapped after the 7th of October terror attacks in southern Israel. In one of the clips, a man is brought in on a gurney by several individuals. At least 4 of them are armed, while in another, somebody struggles to resist while being forcibly dragged into a building resembling a hospital. The IDF claims that these findings prove that the Hamas organization used the Al-Shifa hospital on the day of the massacre itself as part of its terror infrastructure. Further images released by the IDF from surveillance cameras at the Al-Shifa hospital showed how Hamas terrorists inside the hospital as well as outside were actually guarding the rooms where these hostages had been apparently kept, as well as stolen IDF vehicles had been brought to the medical center. The IDF also released an infographic showing the locations near the Al-Shifa complex where the bodies of hostages Yehudit Weiss and Corporal Noah Marciano had been found several days ago. Now, refuting the claims that have been made by Hamas, the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari said that Marciano was initially wounded by an IDF strike on the 9th of November while being held in Gaza. She was subsequently taken to Shifa, where she was murdered. The injuries were non-threatening in nature, initially, is what the IDF spokesperson said. The IDF had made this claim based on a preliminary pathological report. The Hamas, however, has claimed that the 19-year-old Israeli soldier had been killed by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza.
This is 7th of October, 10:55 a.m. The evidence I will share was sent by Israel to diplomatic channels to the countries of those civilians. Here you can see Hamas taking a hostage inside the vicinity. He even doesn't look need a treatment, but they're taking it inside the hospital. I will now share this video that shows the same hostage entering into the hospital with a gunman, terrorist, inside the hospital. This is the main entrance of the hospital. Click. This is at 10:55 a.m. They're entering another hostage. Gunmen are entering another hostage from those countries I mentioned into the vicinity. The terrorists are guarding the room. We have not yet located both of these hostages and rescued them. We have not yet located them.
Now, the Israeli Defense Forces have said that troops operating near the inpatient building at the Al-Shifa hospital found a booby-trapped pickup truck in a garage inside the medical complex's walls. When it was destroyed in a controlled explosion, a tunnel was exposed beneath the floor of this garage. The IDF's engineers had uncovered a tunnel which was 10 meters deep and running 55 meters to a blast-proof door. The tunnel entrance contains various defense mechanisms such as a blast-proof door and also a firing hole in an attempt on the part of Hamas to block Israeli forces from entering.
We've arrived at the Shifa hospital. To the back of you, you see intact the Qatari section of the hospital. Lights are on. The hospital is still functioning. This has been a very slow and gradual operation in discovering munitions, weapon caches. And tonight, we found the first very sophisticated shaft. This shaft was in a sheltered area inside the hospital under a car that was full of weapons, ready for forces that came near the hospital. We're in a very threatened area, but this is important to show that we found the first shaft here inside the perimeter of the hospital.
Well, we are currently being joined by IDF spokesperson Jonathan Conricus. Thank you so much for speaking to Times Now. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces, Mr. Conricus, had put out videos of Hamas bringing in 2 hostages into the Al-Shifa hospital. This is after the terror attacks that took place on the 7th of October. Any indications of if most of the hostages from that particular attack and elsewhere in Israel had been brought to Al-Shifa?
So we know that several were taken to Shifa, the Shifa hospital, which is a known Hamas stronghold. At this stage, I don't know exactly how many, but I do know, for instance, that sadly, we found the bodies of 2 Israeli hostages, a middle-aged woman and a young soldier, both of them female. Their bodies were found, one inside the compound and one in a house very close to the Shifa hospital. So there is a direct link between Hamas illicit activities and the abduction of Israeli civilians and the Shifa hospital.
Well, I ask you this because as the IDF explains in that video that it's put out, there were several hospitals along the way from where the hostages had been kidnapped. And then they were specifically brought to Al-Shifa because of the network of tunnels that Hamas has built underneath. How confident is Israel about tracing the whereabouts of these hostages now?
So we are tracking the whereabouts, and of course this is at the top of our priorities. That is what our troops are seeking to do. The aim of the war is to dismantle Hamas, defeat it militarily, and make sure that never again will there be an October 7 emanating from Gaza. And second thing is to bring back our people. It's been 45 days where more than 236 Israelis have been held against their will by this jihadi organization, and we are committed to bringing all of them back home.
Now, like you said in your response to the very first question, sir, Israel has confirmed that 2 hostages had been killed by Hamas. 4 were released by Hamas, 2 American citizens, and as well as 2 elderly women. What do you know so far about the fate of the others?
Most of it is unknown. We presume that they are alive. That is the working assumption. We presume so because we understand that Hamas sees the hostages as valuable assets, perhaps even as the life insurance of the senior terrorists of Hamas. And therefore, we assume that they are kept well underground and safe. In any case, Hamas is responsible for anything that happens to them. They are the ones who will pay the price for this horrible crime of abducting civilians from their homes.
Now, earlier 31 premature babies had to be evacuated from the Al-Shifa hospital. Is the hospital now completely secure, which is it under IDF control? And what about the patients still inside? What about their fate?
Yes, those babies were evacuated safely from Shifa with Israeli help through incubators that Israel provided and with coordination with the Egyptians and UN authorities and the Palestinian Red Crescent. And I'm happy to confirm that they indeed reached their final destination in southern Gaza and also in Egypt, and that they're now being taken care of properly. And that's a good thing. That is the result that we wanted in terms of the babies. There are still civilians left in the Shifa compound, but there is a gradual process of evacuation. At the end of it, there will be no civilians left in Shifa, and we will continue to uncover, expose, and show to the world all of Hamas military infrastructure that they have had hidden inside the hospital, and most importantly, under the hospital.
A final question, sir. Now, has the theatre of operations shifted from Al-Shifa to the Indonesian hospital in Gaza? I ask you this because 12 people were reported killed in an Israeli strike on the hospital. The World Health Organization claims that the dead include patients as well as their companions. Is Israel in a position to confirm this? Did this really happen?
No, I cannot confirm that at this time. I am aware of reports, but I cannot confirm. And I would like to emphasize that when Israeli forces took the Shifa compound, not a single Palestinian patient or civilian was wounded. There were four Hamas operatives that were killed outside of the hospital, but no civilians were wounded. And that is our intention. That is the level of detail that we are focused on, and we go to great effort in order to make sure that civilians are not killed, especially not those that are patients in a hospital.
Okay, Mr. Kondrakis, thank you so much for speaking to Times Now and briefing us about the operations underway on the part of the IDF in Gaza. We'll slip into a short break right now. We'll come back with a lot more on the other side. Stay tuned.